Okay, we are at the point where you are ready to write your answer for Section B, the 19th century novel. Again, we dismiss the idea that just because you watched the Jim Carrey movie on The Christmas Carol doesn't mean you can write a successful CALSC answer on it, okay? You only can write successfully, to the best of your ability, on the strange case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And you had this question on Hyde as an abnormal character, okay? And again, as we've modelled with Romeo and Juliet, we want to emphasise that the extract is your friend. It is not something that you just skim through and then think, you know what, I can't do a lot with this. I'm going to just come up with 4 quotes of my own. You need to use a mixture of the quotes from your memory and the quotations from the extract that are going to be successful. So we need to pretend that we have read this extract already for the debate, and you may have highlighted lots of things in your extract, but you need to then make some intelligent decisions about the best ones, okay? I quite like the simile, like a man in mental perplexity, okay, about Mr. Utterson and his reaction to it, but it's not really Mr. Hyde. It's only when we read on and we find that he was pale and dwarfish, so we've got these adjectives, we've got the noun deformity, an impression of deformity without any nameable malformation, displeasing smile. I've got this long list of the negatives about Hyde, using the anaphora of he gave and he had, okay, and he spoke, okay? I really like the power of 3 that comes in here, the hitherto unknown, because he didn't know about them before, disgust, loathing and fear. Okay, so that's very much a possible candidate that we've got there. But then we've got a classic one-word quotation, because who says it has to be hugely detailed? It could be zooming in on a particularly effective word, and in this case, the adjective troglodytic. Okay, troglodytes were cave dwellers. In the regression to our ancestors, okay? They lived in the dark in caves. They were the sort of archetypal creature that used to sort of bash you on the head with a stick if it wanted sort of food because you had it and it didn't, okay? So something troglodytic, something that goes back in time to how we used to be, you know, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years ago, a regressionary throwback to evolution and the theories of Charles Darwin. So there's a lot we can do just with that one word, troglodytic, because it makes them abnormal. It's not how people should behave in a civilized society. And at the end, along with the reference to Harry Jekyll, a close friend, not Henry, but his friend Harry, emphasising that duality of Jekyll, we have, if ever I read Satan's signature upon a face, it is on that of your new friend, okay? We've got the sibilance there, the hissing S sound, okay? You know, the first time we meet Mr. Hyde is when he's described as having a hissing intake of breath, which is another quotation we could have put on here. And always, if a quote you didn't originally consider suddenly comes to mind when you look at one from the extract, you could still throw that in. That's got potential to then link that, the sibilance, the hissing sort of snake-like noise, and then the reference to the snake in the Garden of Eden in the hissing intake of breath, when he shrank back with a hissing intake of breath, because, of course, by shrinking, it's almost that reminder that he's smaller than Jekyll, just like the evil that's been laying dormant within tall, handsome, smooth-faced Henry Jekyll. Okay? So, of the various quotations, we've made the choice with going for troglodytic and Satan's signature from the extract. But we need, from there, as we said before, you know, a key point and 2 different key points. So we need the big ideas to be separate. You get no credit for writing the same big idea 4 times, okay? Hyde is like an ape, sort of 4 times is not going to get you very far, even if you've got 4 different quotations. So that first one is Hyde as sort of as a missing link almost, okay? You know, a connection to our evolutionary past and our ancestry, okay? To the Neanderthals and knuckle draggers, whatever you want to call them, missing link to our evolutionary past, almost like the man's darkest, most bestial and violent and animalistic side. If you want another way to go for animalistic there, there's a big idea around troglodytic. So our next extract idea, just to make sure that it's different, Satan's signature, well, yes, that is different, because in the first one he's being compared to a caveman. In the second, something that, you know, depends upon people's religious beliefs again. Satan's signature, he's being compared to the devil, okay? Who was initially, must be remembered, was a fallen angel, okay? You know, Satan was somebody who turned over to the dark side. And so Hyde as a fallen angel also makes him, you know, somebody who has that potential to understand right from wrong, but still chose this path. It makes him the opposite to Gabriel John Utterson, the lawyer, okay, whose name reminds you of the angel in the biblical story of of Mary and the Immaculate Conception. You know, Gabriel is the angel who talks to Mary and announces her pregnancy. Okay, so we've got a fallen angel to contrast with what seems to be. I put the emphasis on seems to be because we're not quite sure with Mr. Utterson, but the angelic, pure, perfect gentleman who can resist temptation. So we had two very different ideas there from the extract. Okay. But in between those, and it's always important, I think, didn't mention this in the Romeo and Juliet video, but some people will go, let's write 2 paragraphs about the extract. Their preference will be extract, then a quotation from your memory, extract, then a quotation from your memory. And so long as you can cover both, and you've got an even weighting between what you're coming up with from the extract and what you're coming up with from the rest of the text and the whole novel or novella, okay, then that's the crucial thing. We've got to make a decision now about which of these quotations works well. So many people will be tempted to go through Ape Like Fury, and under normal circumstances there's so much you can do. You could write all about Charles Darwin's theories and lots of context about Victorian society and being shocked by the challenge to the biblical story. If we are descended from the same ancestors as apes, then at that point it challenged the Adam and Eve and the creation myth in the book of Genesis. Just one problem with that: Ape Like Fury would be repeating the idea I've already got. If Hyde's a missing link to our evolutionary past, I've already said that with troglodytic. I could bring in Ape Like Fury in the same paragraph, but I should not be making 2 separate CALSC paragraphs out of these 2, because it's very unlikely that I would not end up repeating myself and therefore throwing away the chance of different marks and a different coverage. Okay, so I am going with great reluctance. I was tempted to cross it out, but just to put a question mark against whether I'd link it to troglodytic in my planning. Okay, I'm going to go instead for the idea of, we've had him as a fallen angel, but when he's compared to being like some damned juggernaut, a juggernaut, remember, the Indian god Jagannath was celebrated in an extraordinary festival with a huge temple on wheels that used to drive unstoppably through the streets of an Indian town, in which there were rumours that people, obsessively religious devotees, would throw themselves under its wheels, or people just got caught up in the crush. But either way, this thing stopped for no one. It was an unstoppable, devastating force. It also makes him sound like a god. Okay, even at the time when the German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche had just announced 3 years earlier, God is dead. There's no need for gods anymore because there will be supermen who exist outside of society, who break out of all bounds, who can do their own things, okay? These ideas were very relevant to Stevenson. I think the idea of Hyde being an unstoppable, possibly supernatural force, okay? Or an unstoppable Superman, if you want the idea, long before Marvel Comics got a hold of the idea, that was Nietzsche's word. The Superman was this character who didn't need to play by society's rules. People like Utterson make society's rules. People like Hyde can break them because they are superior to all. And that's how he feels when he tramples calmly on the child and when he drives unstoppably across people's emotions and doesn't care about how he will control what he... and ultimately destroy everything, including himself as a self-destroyer. Okay, like some damn juggernaut is also a reminder about science trampling on religion. You can connect that simile, and again, focus on the language techniques, with the idea that Hyde could be a reflection of how science in the conflict in Victorian society, science ultimately is going to trample remorselessly across and upon anything and everything that people believed in and stood for. Okay, Victorian ethics and morals, biblical beliefs, all of those things were being challenged by science. It was the juggernaut trampling on all of these ideas, okay, and trampling calmly along the way. So our final idea, we could indeed, the great flame of anger. There's another quotation that links the idea of science breaking out of control and all of those as possibilities. But we could go for the idea of Hyde as the embodiment of social fears, okay, in what he does with trampling calmly. I'm going to go back to that one because Hyde is the monster that lurks within us all. Hyde is what everybody in Victorian society feared the most, and what 3 years later would come to fruition, would come true in the form of Jack the Ripper. Somebody believed to be a medical man, believed to be a gentleman, never proven, never caught, but the brutal murder in the most horrific ways of 5 women in the East End of London in 1888. Don't write about Jack the Ripper inspiring the book, but you could mention how Hyde is the embodiment or the representation of societal fears. He's everything the Victorians were scared of, because he knows right from wrong. He makes these choices, and yet he chooses the wrong path just because there is part of him that delights in it, part of him that enjoys it, part of him that enjoys the savagery and the animalistic, bestial wildness of it all. Okay? All of these quotations also give you a chance to throw in so much about context. So, the evolutionary past, you should be writing a sentence or more about how it links to Darwin's theory of evolution. Okay? Hyde as the fallen angel, well, you could look at one of the influences for the book, like Thomas Weir. Okay, the preacher with his satanic confession. You could bring in Friedrich Nietzsche. Excuse me, and you could bring in Victorian respectability. And that's my throat gone. Thank you.